Okay, it is now 5 o'clock, and I believe everyone, all council members are online. So I'd like to call the special council meeting of November 16, 2020 in session. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardak.
Here.
Peg Conway.
Here.
Ed Hattenbach.
Here.
Alita Kainmine.
Here.
Natalie Wolf.
Here.
Ray Warren.
Here.
Scott Larmer.
Here.
Andy Kakey.
Here.
Wes Brown. He's here. He's muted.
Here.
Okay. If everyone could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. You don't have to, I think in the past we've had you rise, but given the circumstances, you can stay seated and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, and welcome to the meeting. And is Rich or Scott going to just introduce the fourth reading before we open the public hearing?
Rich, do you have your ordinance there? You want to do the reading by title, or you may take care of it?
Do we just by title give a little introduction to it, whatever you prefer? I'm happy to do either.
I think just by title is fine.
Okay, this is the fourth reading of ordinance 2020-16, adding chapter 154.84 to title 4 to the Village of Amberley codified ordinances regarding Amberley Green zoning district regulations.
Do you want it back this way? Or
No,
that
I
one?
like seeing.
Okay, and I would now like to open the public hearing. It is 5:02, and I believe that at least a couple people are online to give testimony, and I'd first like to recognize Steve Couchard.
Oh, I just tried to unmute. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Steve Couchard, 3205 North White Tree Circle. Before I comment, I really want to thank you, the mayor and council, for holding this additional public hearing. I know there have been a lot of challenges trying to adhere to all the village protocol during all this COVID-19 crisis. And, many residents have expressed frustration and discouragement in trying to participate. And I know, as Ms. Kainmine indicated at the last council meeting, the village welcomes resident input. So with that said, approving this or any zoning changes to the Amberley Green at this time is to me, not the best interest of the village. We've heard concerns from the BZA and Planning Committee about why we're doing this and the specifics of the zoning text itself. We've also had public hearings and readings of the ordinance when the public couldn't hear or even comment. I question whether this would be considered legal if someone were to challenge it, but that's not why we're here today. You've invested a lot of time and money to get to this point. A recent newly funded slope study was commissioned, as I understand it. Why would we not want this type of information before we start any discussions on a complex zoning ordinance? Zoning ordinances are intended to be a guide to promote diverse and complementary uses and land activities in an orderly fashion. How many times do you go shopping for a gift and buy the gift box first, then search for a gift that will fit in the box? That is what this zoning ordinance does because of the detail it's gotten into. And that's the worst situation to be in. Let the gift come to the village first, then start to design the box with whatever zoning and development standards that suits the desired and acceptable development. The village is having private meetings with potential developers. There are no firm goals and objectives for the property. What is the village telling developers in these private discussions? It certainly doesn't include current resident input. Less than 3% of registered voters have commented after the June 2019 open houses. That's 3% of residents. The village manager has indicated numerous times that this input is what has driven the content of the ordinance. From what I can determine, there's no other resident input that's been documented. Most of you remember that years ago, residents fought against the housing development on the Amberley Green. Do you know if residents still want limited, if any, development? Do you know if taxpayers might be willing to approve a small millage tax increase to help keep the green green? Do you know if residents might want the next reduction in the police levy to go towards maintenance, improvements, and preservation of the green? An effort like that wouldn't even increase our taxes. Do you know if residents want revenue from the green to help bridge the gap in our projected $10 million street maintenance requirements? What's the expected revenue that residents expect in return for this multi-million-dollar investment? Much more public input is needed to determine how to proceed. In all planning approaches, goals and objectives come after public outreach and input. After all, who is council responsible to please with the outcome? Amberley citizens or yourselves? Any planning process can always use more public input. Here's an appropriate statement I discovered from some of my research that applies to our current situation. It says, no planning department worth its salt creates or significantly alters a master plan, design guidelines, or zoning without input from the community. Don't move forward with the zoning ordinance until you get current resident input. Then create a vision with well-defined goals and objectives tied into a plan to meet this input. If we follow this path, land use and appropriate zoning will become much clearer. We do have the time to do this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I know Colin Driscoll's online to give testimony.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I feel council needs to rediscover its roots regarding the Amberley Green development process. Various meeting highlights over time. February 09, council adopts a vision statement, a long-range planning committee that was chaired by Marie Stillpass. March 09, council establishes a 16-member citizens advisory committee to investigate Amberley Green redevelopment. This was chaired by Scott Wolf. September 10, the planning committee, now chaired by the Vice Mayor John Chaikin, convenes for the purpose of making recommendations related to the potential development of the north side in Amberley Green. Peg Conway and Scott Wolf serve on this committee. October of 10, the UC site planning studio assessment will include analyses of topography, soils, visual, and hydrology, and be completed in December. In attendance were Peg Conway and Ed Hattenback. November of 10, Amberley hosts World Town Planning Day, where more than 90 professional planners, students, local officials, and residents focused on the north side in Amberley Green. The charrette participants were encouraged to think outside the box while balancing their suggestions with sound planning principles. March of 11, prior meetings and resource materials formed the basis for a slide presentation to residents at Adath Israel. More than 150 people attended. Many prominent residents gave comments, including Ray Warren and Bill Doring. April of 2011, the committee presents their report and recommendations to council. In May of 11, the report was adopted by council. The process moves forward as our village manager seeks proposals from qualified developers in 2015, specifically incorporating the long-range plan. Then in April of 16, the process aborts when multiple council members state the long-range plan is outdated, not realistic, and not market tested, so no developer is chosen. 3.5 years have passed since then and today. I feel the Long Range Planning Committee is a committee specifically created by village ordinance and tasked specifically in the area of land development. Will nobody on council seek wisdom and guidance from this committee? This committee was activated several times in the past under prior administrations. I'm not sure why it hasn't been activated in the last 10 years. I find silence on this topic of the Long Range Planning Committee to be deafening. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else online that would like to give testimony? Tammy, do you see anyone?
No one has a hand raised, and the rest of the participants are all muted. So,
Okay. Do any council members want to make any comments? You may want to make a comment.
Sound, Natalie.
I am. I'm looking for myself to do that. Yeah, well, let me see. What's the, this is the fourth hearing and the public hearing, fourth reading, public hearing. I wrote just a couple of notes because we've had so many meetings. We've had a lot of public hearings. We've been hearing comments. We've made a lot of accommodations for residents to be able to give testimony. And the fact is, the same residents are giving testimony for every public hearing and prior to. We are not getting, despite anyone's, fervent wishes, we are not getting a any kind of feeling and sentiment from the community that they do not want us to move forward with this. In fact, the voices that we're hearing in opposition to us moving forward on the zoning are from the same people who ran for council on an exact platform of halting all development and future zoning of Amberley Green. And the citizens in Amberley voted based on that platform of those residents, and they decisively voted against that exact issue. And so here we are. We've had more and more opportunities for public hearings, and I mean, I know that Mr. Couchard and Mr. Driscoll and I saw Susan Glazer's online too, or Emily is, and I know that they would really like us to continue to have more and more public hearings, because the more that we kick this down the road or don't do anything about it, is a longer time that nothing happens at Amberley Green. And that is all I have to say.
Okay, does anyone else? One thing I want to state right now, and it's to correct something. Mr. Couchard referenced private discussions underway. There are no private discussions underway. I believe the reason he believes that there are some is a reference in a Scott's weekly report. I think it was the one that came to the October council meeting, referring to a meeting that he and I had with a developer concerning Amberley Green. That was the same type of meeting that I've had countless times with developers for both Scott, myself, and I know other members of council reach out to people in the industry to gain knowledge, and gaining knowledge is a good thing. Listening is a good thing, and we don't have all the answers, and I'm disappointed when people read things into something where all council and all Scott's doing is trying to gain knowledge, and I think that was very disingenuous, and I don't like it. And I assure you there are no private discussions going on. Anyone else have anything? We do have our work session scheduled for November 30th.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to make a comment and ask a question in relative to the timeline that Mr. Driscoll recited. And I want to ask about in 2015, when we put out the requests for proposals, he stated that those requests were based on the long range plan that was created 5 years earlier. And I just want to clarify, that's not my understanding. My recollection, I was an elected member then. We went through the Land Development Committee, met with quite a few developers and assessed the market, got some information, and learned that the long range plan maybe had some merit, but it really wasn't something to hang our hats on. The concept of mixed use was still desirable. There was a desire to have, it's noteworthy. Is that correct? First of all, is my recollection of that process accurate, Tom or Scott?
I'll give it a shot. And I mean, the long-range plan that existed at that point was provided to people who were interested in responding to the RFP. It was not the basis of their RFP.
Okay, that's what I was trying to
clarify. It was what existed at that point for people to have some idea of the types of things that we might be interested in putting on the property.
Right.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay, I still want to say something else. And I think it's noteworthy in that recitation of the timeline that 4 years elapsed between the time it was adopted and the time that anything was moving forward out into the marketplace, during which time the village weathered a severe financial crisis and underwent a significant leadership transition. And it was after the leadership transition that things began to happen. And it's been several years. And it's, in my mind, I believe the process has been methodical and measured with input from a variety of sources and a lot of communication to the village along the way. And so I was going to say something to the effect that what Natalie said, that there actually was a significant public engagement of which I took part in the fall of 2019 around the council campaign because it was a central issue. And so I think what we're doing is one piece of what needs to happen for Amberley Green. There are other things that we are doing. We have always been what we are doing. We have mentioned them in these types of meetings for a year at least around land planning. When the JCC was at the center of this process, we were concerned about the other parcels. Now that question becomes a little more open-ended because the JCC's interest is delayed or postponed indefinitely. So I want to assert a view that we have been operating in a very methodical, appropriate manner, and that we have been receiving input and we are continuing to receive input.
And following up on that, Peg, we've had multiple articles in the print news. We developed, Scott did those videos. There has been a big effort to communicate to people and to ask for comments. So it is, again, not right to say that we have not sought comment.
Tom?
Yep.
I've got before I wanted to share what I want to say, can you go through what is the current process now?
Our next step in the process is we have scheduled a council work session where the intent is to work through the comments that we've received, as including from the Planning Commission, including the comments that were made this evening, as well as all other public hearings, and again, give council and a chance to weigh in about possible changes they want to make, discuss the timeline. That it is a work session similar to the other two work sessions that we had, so it's open-ended, and the intent is hopefully we can come out of that work session with a clearer path forward, whatever that is.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to echo a couple comments that Ms. Conway just shared. I just wanted to add to it. I know Peggy mentioned that the process has been methodical and measured, and certainly correct. I would add one other point that I think kind of maybe echoes something that Natalie shared. It's been methodical, measured, and open. And I can speak that, you know, we started this process a while ago. There's been a considerable input from the community. This was prior to COVID and during COVID. Obviously, during COVID, it hasn't been ideal. I can say that from my own experience. But nonetheless, there have been opportunities for a very long time. Having said that, I certainly appreciate the passion, the interest, the comments from Mr. Couchard and Mr. Driscoll. And you've been with us through this whole process, highlighting what you believe are shortcomings. And I believe I may share some of those sentiments, but I certainly appreciate that you've been with us this whole time, reminding us of what we need, what we should consider. And as Tom just said a moment ago, this process is continuing. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Very, very quick comment. As I think you all know from my my comments every time we've had a meeting, I'm very focused and fixated on the green space component and the park components of this. And I do want to just I feel a little bit uncomfortable with the way that Natalie kind of called the election a mandate. I'm not sure that's accurate. I think we have a lot of nuanced positions in our community about this, and the election was not a single issue election either. So I want to state that for the record. But I also just want to, in the interest of transparency and meetings and so forth, I saw come across as the notices today that the reference that I believe Steve made to the MKSK Amberley Green whatever the latest version that Scott has been working with MKSK on, there'll be a public meeting, a Parks Committee meeting, Public Buildings and Parks Committee, Tuesday, November 24th. I believe that's next Tuesday at 4 p.m. online, a regular committee meeting where we'll hear I'm eager, I haven't seen it either, eager to tune in and hear about that piece. I continue to think that is an incredibly critical piece of anything that we do here, and the folks I talk to, the people who use the property regularly, the younger members of our community, the people who have spent their COVID days thinking that the green space is the most critical asset we have in this community, I think are all going to be very interested to hear about that in the next phase of that. But I don't want that to slip by without, I don't know, maybe it's a question to Scott, will that presentation be part of our work session as well, or is that really is that the meeting that people should tune into if they want to hear about that? Was that the right information to share with our residents in general, that's what they should tune in for if they want to know about that particular land use presentation?
So at the Public Buildings and Parks Committee, MKSK will share what they have done so far, and I've just asked them to take a look and identify those undevelopable areas, and then take a look at what type of uses might be able to be identified for those areas, whether it's an orchard or whether it's a ropes course or whether it's some type of passive recreation, and what those areas could serve. So that's all that is just identifying the types of uses, but more importantly, seeing from a aggregate, what are those undevelopable areas on Amberley Green.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Tammy, are there any hands raised?
No, I do not see any hands raised, and All guests are muted.
All right. I thank you very much for your input this evening. And as I said, the next step in the process will be we have some committee meetings coming up that Councilwoman K-Mine referred to, and other meetings. But the next step specifically in this process will be the work session, which is scheduled for 4 o'clock on the 30th of November. And that again will be a Zoom meeting. And if there's no other business, I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and please do everything to stay safe and healthy. It's difficult times, but relax and enjoy the holiday. And I adjourn the meeting.
All right.
Small, everyone.